The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast. Hello there, and welcome to The Force of Others. I'm Zachary Owen Turner.
I'm Matt Beutner, and today, among many other things, we're going to talk about comic books, new comics that we just read,
Woo.
Sigourney Weaver revealing details about her role in The Mandalorian Grogu, and Derek Hoffman has been named the Lucasfilm Vice President of Development.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, Zach, back to you for what happened in our weeks in our real lives.
Yeah, it was a good week. Not anything of note that I can share on the podcast, but it's something happened, which is exciting, and we'll talk about it later. But yeah, good week. Watched the football game, but really just ate snacks and watched the commercials. Star Wars didn't really find me this week too much, except for in the new comic book, and went to a local comic book shop here in the city, and it's pretty new. It's only been open for about 2 years, and
Cool.
It's close enough to the house that I'm like, okay, cool. Like I think this might be my little shop, and every time I go in, I get a little freebie because they're new, and they're like, hey, you want to take this? And I'm like, yes, I will take this. But that's just hospitality when they're just like, hey, you want a sticker? And you're like, yeah, I'll take a sticker. And then you come back and you spend more money. But yeah, what about you?
I had a real busy week. Followers of the podcast will know that I talk about my theater job from time to time, but we went to our second theater festival in the last 3 weeks, which is preposterous.
A lot.
But just came back from Junior Theater Festival West in Sacramento, California. Very successful weekend for my students. It was really, really good. It's great team, great students, and just in mentioning the world being so small, shout out to someone that Zach and I went to college with, Mr. Isaiah Bailey. I'm always the last one into the room where my students perform. Just because, especially on this trip, I'm always like, keep them lined up and ready to go. And then as they kind of process in, I run in and take my seat. And I always run right past like the judge's table or whatever. And as I'm running past, I double took because I could have sworn that the guy sitting closest to me was someone I went to college with. It's like, there ain't no way. And I sat down. And then as the kids were getting ready to perform, I'm like looking at him. And then eventually he's like, who's looking at me? And looked up and saw me. And we both went, and just stared at each other and pointed, and then the music started. We were like, what? And the music started, and it was so wild.
That's fun.
And then afterwards, I ran over and gave him a hug, and it was really, really cool. My kids performed a cut of The Lion King Jr.,
Nice.
And our college friend, Mr. Isaiah Bailey, just finished up playing Mufasa on tour with The Lion King Jr., so
a role
awesome.
he was born for.
Hey, absolutely. And then just keeping with the world being tiny, one of the things at this festival is the students get like an acting workshop with different people that have come to work the festival, and their acting teacher was Isaiah Bailey.
Oh, nice.
And so my students found out, you went to college with him? That's so cool. You're both so old. And I was like, thanks, guys. That's great. But anyway, so that was what happened in my theater life. Star Wars did find me.
Oh, cool.
It found me through some really, really cool custom minifigures for my role-playing games that I was gonna show to the podcast as well, and I forgot them. They are at home, but I will show them next week, and I want to name drop a buddy, a friend that I've made on Etsy that will... What are you trying to tell me, Zach?
We could put it below us in the video.
Yeah, but I want to actually show off the work and hold it up to the camera. Lycan Miniatures 3D on Etsy and Instagram. So check out his stuff. Daniel does really, really great work. I can't recommend it enough. I'll show it next week, but for now, I'll just go ahead and tell you. He made me a custom The Stranger from The Acolyte.
Oh,
and
cool.
a Brutus and a SM-33. From Skeleton Crew, and like just custom minifigures that, I'll use at some point in my role-playing games. Anyway, but it also found me in walking through the airport. I saw a BB-8 suitcase that I have never seen before.
Cool.
And that wasn't something that I sought out and purchased. This was something that I saw in the wild. But anyway, speaking of seeing Star Wars in the wild, we got... finally, one of my most anticipated Star Wars projects in a while, Charles Soule's Legacy of Vader comic book.
Woo!
This is the comic that shows Kylo Ren Kylo Ren's journey immediately after The Last Jedi. I am so hyped. I have lots of things to say, but I want to hear what Zach has to say first.
Yeah, so
Zach, to you.
I've got the there's a bunch of variants out for this too, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So I was like flipping through, but to renew the Acolyte, I got the Mother Anastasia variant, which was
Nice.
really cool. Has nothing to do with the story, I found out, but cool like variant edition. I enjoyed it. I view this as like the start of a television series. You got to give it 2 or 3 episodes. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so in. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's fun. I'll probably get another one and see where it goes. I loved the second half. The first half, I guess it's just the middle that I kind of bumped into. I'll do it. I'll do this in order. Likes. I loved. Spoilers, first off, for the podcast.
We're gonna spoil
Huge
this thing
spoilers.
like crazy. So go read this comic and then come back.
It starts off with Kylo kind of like dealing with, Luke saying, "I'll see you around, kid," which I loved, finally seeing his aftermath of that and his want to kill the past like he has told Rey to do. Loved all that stuff. And then he goes back to a Star Destroyer of sorts and tells Hux, "You're a whiny," also, I'm so sorry, guys. It's early in the morning and I have not collected my thoughts. Let me continue. I love that he calls himself a whiny baby. He says, "Stop being a whiny baby," when he's going through all of his stuff.
Yeah.
I love that he shows Snoke's body just cut in half. He brings the body in 2 different caskets. Hilarious. And pops him up in front of the First Order. Is like, he's dead. I'm the supreme leader. I will lead us to glory. And then he tells himself to stop being a whiny baby. And then he is just real rude to Hux. And like, you're like, no wonder that dude wants to kill that guy. Because man, he is just a huge butt towards Hux. And then he goes to Mustafar. And then that's where I was like, okay, cool. I'll read another one. Because we get another appearance of Vinay, which, if you don't remember, is Vader's advisor, handyman, acolyte from Rogue One. Yeah. A name that I almost chose to see if Matt would remember for his trivia question last week.
I might not have gotten it.
Yeah.
You might have gotten me had you done that one.
But yeah, and I'm excited to see where it goes. This really started cooking for me once it got onto Mustafar, and I was like, okay, cool. Now we're gonna see where this goes. I disliked the whole Hux interaction. I thought, I know that they've always been like tension, but like he is like to take someone who's in charge of your military and go, "You're gonna build me a throne before you do anything else."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Kylo.
Yeah.
But what about you?
Well, it's funny. I don't really know that I had dislikes. There's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
But I loved, for me, Charles Soule always opens his first issues well. The first moment, for me, always grabs me. I think about his Poe Dameron run. The first panel is Poe Dameron, a close-up of Poe in the cockpit of an X-Wing, helmet on, flying, and just saying, "Watch this." That's perfect. That is the perfect encapsulation of that character in an exciting moment. Let's go. And I loved that the literal first thing that we saw was Kylo having just landed on the Star Destroyer, and it's the moment that we never really got in the sequels of his arrival, his Emperor Palpatine Return of the Jedi style arrival. All of the army lined up to greet his return. I love that. And just that it opens with him showing these, like you said, severed halves of Snoke to the army and being like, "I'm in charge now." And then force pushing them out, the corpse out into space. Snoke is dead. I'm the guy now. The only thing that I will say, the only thing I did bump up against was the word choice in him talking to Hux. "My bloodline shaped the galaxy as we know it. Your bloodline produces lieutenants and lick spittles." I was like,
Yeah,
lick
lick
spittles?
spittles. I bumped into that too.
And I kind of looked it up. I was like, I learned a new word. I'm not one I'm ever going to use, but I learned a new word. Thank you, Charles Soule. And
Your bloodline produces lick spittles.
bloodline produces lieutenants and lick spittles. I just thought that was very, very funny. It was also, for me, a little more academic than Ben Solo ever has been before. Like, I like that, he's dressing him down and stuff. But, yeah, I do have another dislike now that I think about it, but I'll get there in a minute.
Bootlickers would have felt more...
Lieutenants and bootlickers.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the nice alliteration, though, I guess, of lieutenants and lick spittles. But either way, it was just a gross word. I was like, lick spittles, gross! But I don't want to make this interview about, like, this comic is all the stuff that should have been in the sequels, but the next thing is something that I wanted to see on screen. Kylo fighting up the steps of Vader's castle on Mustafar is straight out of the Rise of Skywalker concept art. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we got a version of that moment in the forest on Mustafar, but if you aren't a super nerd like us, you would never know that that's Mustafar.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard even to tell that that's a volcanic planet in the Rise of Skywalker, because, like, you see a volcanic planet, and then you're zooming into a forest on fire. And it's like, okay. So, I loved that we finally got to see, in canon storytelling, Kylo Ren fighting up the steps of Vader's castle.
Yeah.
Begs the question of those protector guys, why are they there? Why do they fight him at least twice? Here and again in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll explain it at the end. Maybe he messes up and they're like, you're not really evil,
Could be. Could also just be that they're like, it's somebody for Kylo to fight. We're not going to think about it too hard.
Yeah.
Somebody will write a book eventually, The Defenders of Vader's Ruins. But as to the Vinay of it all, I just think it's fun and cool. Again, if you don't know what we're talking about, he's the guy that kneels before Vader in Rogue One when Vader's in his little, back to tank. And I don't remember what he says, was something like, Director Krennic has arrived. And then he's shown up a couple times in expanded storytelling as just this, Vader, fanboy, right? I like that he's still alive, and I like that he's in, a version of the Bomar monk. Because Zach didn't talk about it. His head is decapitated cool. And is in a little bubble attached to this it's not quite a spider body. It's almost more like a big dog body dog robot.
It has
or something.
Arms, yeah.
But it's very very cool.
Interesting.
It's creepy and weird, and I like it. And I like that he's just kind of skittering around the Vader's ruins, just waiting for something to do. My only other dislike, I think it's a matter of necessity, in that in The Force Awakens, General Hux is terrifying. And then from the jump in Last Jedi, he becomes a punchline. Right? And so then you kind of also, you have to do that here. Right? Where we have to keep with this now that Hux is just kind of a bitch. And so Kylo's going to be crappy to him, and that's what we got. And so it's a wider thing that they have to keep consistent. I'm hoping that part of this comic will be to make Hux threatening again. I don't say we got to fix Hux, but I would love just a moment of two of him being a master tactician. Neither here nor there. The biggest thing that I liked is that, kind of like you said, Kylo's quest coming out of The Last Jedi is that he's evaluating his kill the past philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? Sidebar, but a lot of people do say one of the things that isn't liked about The Last Jedi is that the movie's message is to kill the past, that it's anti-nostalgia. It's anti the nostalgia of Force Awakens. And Rian Johnson has said on record, let's not lose sight of the fact that the villain said to kill the past. The villain said that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's still the journey that the movie goes on, but even Rian Johnson doesn't necessarily think that that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, I love that that's what he's dealing with. And so, it's a way to comment on the nostalgia of this era of storytelling that we're in, just for all of it, not just Star Wars, right? For all fiction right now. But I'm curious what the rest of this comic is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, discussion point for you. Do you think
Good.
we're going to see, because we're on Mustafar and if we're using things from concept art from Rise of Skywalker, do you think we're finally going to see the Eye of Wabish? That weird spider frog.
That's like on a giant baby.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's possible.
Because that
Well,
seems very Charles Soule.
It does. The Eye of Webish Bog has shown up in, gosh, it was the Vader run that just happened. The Greg Pak Vader run, like several times. Like that was Vader had to go and like, that's Vader dealing with the revelation that Luke is his kid and everything else. And does he hate Palpatine? And so he did that like 2 or 3 times. Very, very possible. I would love to finally see that moment. If you don't know what we're talking about, originally in the opening of The Rise of Skywalker, Kylo had this conversation with this monster, this like oracle, this like dark oracle that in the novelization of Rise of Skywalker talks about how like something like beware, your true self will be revealed on this journey. You can see what that's about. But just for pacing, they cut it. But yeah, I would love to finally see a conversation between Kylo and that thing.
Yeah. It is.
That would be cool.
Creepy, and I kind of love it.
Yeah, it's very creepy, and I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I remember there being a quote. It was JJ or somebody said that, like, no, I love it that we have that thing in this movie. I think kids are going to be terrified of it.
Yeah, I would be if I was young. I'm a little terrified of it now, honestly. The baby, I think it's the baby head that really, like, pig baby head thing that it sits on that really gets me.
I love that it doesn't make any sense, and it's got this weird, like, symbiotic relationship with a giant pig baby.
Yeah.
If you don't know what we're talking about, Google it.
Yeah,
I'll put the picture below.
I have Webbish, Webbish, if you want to see what we're talking about.
Yes. But all right. So as for the next comic book, the 12 comic books that I have read over the last little bit, the Battle of Jakku Maxa series. It was a 3-4 issue miniseries, and I don't remember what they're called now. But either way, the whole thing's called the Battle of Jakku, and the basic. We're gonna spoil the heck out of this as well, kids. So if you want to read this comic, just jump to the next thing in the time code below. Jump to where we're talking about continuity and stuff. But so the Battle of Jakku, this comic book series, is the story of the kind of Palpatine's. Well, not really. So this era in modern canon, in Star Wars canon now, is about Operation Cinder and the contingency plan. It was Palpatine's plan in the event of his death.
Yes.
That he basically handed the Empire over to somebody named Gallius Rax, and Gallius Rax's job was to make the Battle of Jakku take place, to lure all of the Imperial forces, remaining Imperial forces, and all the New Republic forces there, and then there was a super weapon built into the planet of Jakku, and explode that super weapon to destroy both fleets, and get just the remaining Imperials out into the unknown regions to rebuild and make them the First Order, right? So this, that's been told in the Aftermath trilogy of books, it's been told in the Battlefront 2 video game, and lots of other stuff, and mentioned other places. But this really is Luke and Leia's perspective of those events. Kind of. I was hyped for this comic. It references Star Wars Uprising, the Acolytes of the Beyond. Dr. Aphra shows up. Weasel, Warwick Davis's character from Episode 1 and in Solo: A Star Wars Story, confirmed to still be alive after the events of the original trilogy. Luke and Leia at the forefront. You get the birth of Ben Solo. Lots of cool stuff, and this comic book for me was okay.
Oh.
It felt very unnecessarily stretched within an inch of its life. There were, in my opinion, there were about 4 issues of material, and they stretched it out over 12. A lot of things happened, but a lot of them were very repetitive. Grand Moff Adelhard, the evil Riker, as we talked about earlier on the podcast, who was the villain from Star Wars Uprising. He gets betrayed, I think, 4 times by his fellow Imperials. And so it was repetitive things or things that were not built up to in any way. 2 or 3 times we would meet a rebel they would have a conversation with a character that we know and care about, and then that rebel would get killed, and then it would be a reason for the stakes to ramp up and us to go on another big fight against Moff Adelhard because he must be stopped. And I was like, I mean, we're in a war. Lots of people are getting killed. This is kind of, I don't know. So there's lots of things that I didn't like. But I think most of it came down to that this is a weekly comic book series that was trying to tie up the original trilogy era of Marvel Comics and provide a launching point into the early New Republic era for the main Star Wars comics, which is cool. But do that, in my opinion, do that in a 4-issue miniseries, not a 12-issue maxi series, and just kind of stretch it out like molasses. There's a lot of the wider kind of, I don't want to say problem, but the wider thing to have to jump over for this whole era, this biggest speed bump, is that for the war to continue immediately after Return of the Jedi, you kind of risk losing the fairy tale and space quality that makes Star Wars special, And I understand that's the nature of real life, and that's the nature of like shows like Andor or Game of Thrones or things like that, that sure, you have your happy Ewok party, and everybody's, hugging and smiling, and Lando is clapping along with the music, and then you go to credits, but immediately after they got a whole bigger war to fight, and people are getting killed like the next morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it kind of frames that in kind of a way that it's like, the whole thing is that this is a fairy tale and we want to be hopeful, right? But the biggest new information that we got about the Battle of Jakku was that Adelhard, Evil Riker, was also at Jakku. And it makes it into a weird kind of 3 different armies fighting each other battle in a way that it wasn't before. Because it's like Adelhard and his spice-running crime lord fleet are trying to also destroy the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant, but it doesn't change much of anything. And one of the storytelling problems, last negative thing I'm going to say, that's not true. Last negative thing before I get into the continuity that I'm going to say was that for Adelhard to be the villain of this story, everybody keeps saying that he's crazy and a big problem, but he never really does anything threatening at all. Like, they're just like, we got to stop him. He's lost control. And he never really does any of that. He's just kind of another Imperial that, like, he's definitely a fanatic and he's definitely crazy. He goes on several villain monologues, but he doesn't ever really do anything particularly threatening that warrant Luke and Leia be like, we got to go off and we got to fight.
Yeah.
Like, it's just odd. But to what I was talking about a minute ago, the fairy tale in space and kind of potentially losing that with the battle just continuing, right? Yeah. One of the rebels queued Luke Skywalker up for a nice little Luke Skywalker line. She says, it's like the wars never end. All that changes are the words used to describe them. And Luke says, that's what the Empire wants us to feel. They want us to lose hope, to resign ourselves to the endless darkness. But if we do that, if we just fold, then what of all the battles that came before? Were they meaningless? And what about the battles we have left to fight? So it's like, all right, if we're going to acknowledge that this is the way we're doing the story, we need to at least, tie that in there somehow. But into the continuity issues that I mentioned, I think, either last week or the week before.
Yeah.
So Ray Sloan, Grand Admiral Ray Sloan's character that comes from the Aftermath books. Actually, she comes from A New Dawn,
yes,
which is a different canon novel, but then she's a major player in the Aftermath books. Her arc in those 3 novels is that she is an Imperial who is not a horrible person. She is still an Imperial, like she is still a fascist, right? She believes in control and order, but she believes in control and order for the good of all. And this is what she thinks will fix the galaxy, right? Her arc is to discover that Gallius Rax's mission is to destroy the Empire and lay waste to all of it. And she never joins up with him, goes rogue, and tries to defeat him, and ultimately stops him from setting off the Jakku superweapon that is also why there's so much debris on that planet and wreckage on that planet in Force Awakens, right? They took that and went, well, we're going to say that's the final battle of the Galactic Civil War, right? But she stopped him, and she was never really Team Rax. Pretty much from moment one, she's ready to leave and is working against him. And she is the one that uncovers the mystery. She's kind of a protagonist in that novel for the audience. And in this comic book, she is working closely with him, including helping plan the Battle of Jakku and convincing other Imperials to join. And at one point, Gallius Rax even says, "Sloane, my loyal one." And I was like, what? Now, to be fair, she ends the comic killing him. They kind of do a couple panels summarizing the other stories of this battle, but they were never had that type of relationship at any point. Like, they were friendly when he took over, but she was like, "Who are you? What is this about? Why do you have all this authority? Where'd you come from?" They were never buddy.
Yeah.
And so it raises a lot of problems, in my opinion. Because I got a question, Zach.
Yeah.
For all of these stories like this, all these nerdy things that we like, and especially when they get into tie-in comics and novels and video games and everything else, I got a question. This is an opinion question. Does continuity matter? Just in your opinion.
I don't know, because like, I think it matters if they say it matters, which they did come out and say it matters. You know, when Disney took over, they're like, everything from here out is continuity, and we have a continuity team and a continuity head, and like, it's all going to be one seamless story. So it matters if you say, hey, this is going to be one seamless story, and then it's not, then it definitely matters. That being said, we come from a time of EU, you know, we come from a time of, oh yeah, this isn't necessarily canon, but it's a great Star Wars story, you know? I mean, and half of the video games we got were, you know, not canon, but, you know, still live in our head canon or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it matters on a like marketing front, and a like, if you are as a storyteller, you're like, hey, everything I'm saying right now, we're as a group are forefront and it will all make sense, then it really matters because you have said so. If you don't say that, it doesn't matter. But
no, you're right on. It's if you don't know what Zach's talking about, or when we're saying canon and continuity, you're like, what is this? The way it used to be pre-Disney buyout, there were just as many, if not more, comics, novels, video games, everything than there are now. And going all the way back to in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. The issue was George Lucas never cared and kind of didn't want those stories to exist, but publishing was like, hey, this could be huge for the company and the brand. Why don't we just let them play?
Yeah.
And whenever George was asked about it, he would always say, I don't really care what happens in those stories. They're doing their own thing. But if I ever make more movies, we're not going to acknowledge those stories. And they didn't when they made the prequels, and they didn't when they made the Clone Wars at all. That was the biggest one.
Yeah.
Clone Wars didn't care at all what happened in any of those stories because George told them not to, right? And most of the changes came from George. So the way that they had quote-unquote canon set up in the EU is there were literal tiers of canon.
Yeah.
Where like this project fits into this level, which means it can be contradicted by anything above it, right? And then when Disney bought it, like we said, they wiped all of that so that they had free reign to do whatever with the sequels, but they said it's all going to count moving forward. It was that way for a bit. And most of the time, the quote-unquote like emotional canon or the character arcs will stay pretty much in line.
Yeah. But
the exact details of the way things happen might change. But this one with the full-on arc is completely different. Yeah. Right? Which
if you're the person who wrote that first book and you read this, you're probably like, man, what are you doing?
And I mean, the pros of continuity are what many would call fan service, or what I would call consistency, right? Yeah. Like if the universe is continuing to function the way that you know it to be, that's not fan service, that's consistency.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying that like when Boba Fett shows up for no reason, it isn't fan service. That's fan service, right? But for a character arc to be consistent through other forms of media, that's you know what I mean? But the cons of this level of continuity that no other brand on the planet attempts, right? The biggest con is that there's no creative freedom, right? You can't do, like, if you write a novel between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, we pretty much know what isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying that they should start writing novels where Luke dies or something in the middle of the original trilogy,
Well,
but go ahead.
All you have to do is do what DC does, Elseworlds. All you got to do is label it something else, and you can do whatever you want. You know, like it would be very easy if you're just like, hey, this is a separate universe, still with the Star Wars characters and all that, not canon, but super fun. Read it. Yeah,
and exactly, and that's why we talk about Star Wars What If, right? I think we'll get there eventually. I mean, who knows? We're in a weird moment.
I mean, they've already done it with Visions. They've already said, this is not canon. True. This is still Star Wars, but it's fun, and go watch it.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. And really, when I say what if, I think about it the way that, like, I think about it, which would be, like, take a story that we've seen and don't change it just to change it, have something different happen, and then have the characters that we know, how would they react differently?
Yeah.
Right? What sets them on a completely different path? And that's way too nerdy for most people, and they would never care, right? But yeah, so that's the wider discussion. And I mean, again, none of it's real anyway, so who cares if it fits? But it is something that I think we're eventually going to reach. We're not even eventually. We're there. We're at a point where it's canon until it's not.
Yeah. Well, and I think we're going to get levels of canon again. Like you said, it's going to be anything on film or animation, top level of canon. I mean, Dave already did it. Filoni already did it with Ahsoka and the Ahsoka novel. He's like, it was the fifth brother, now it's the first brother, and he looks different, but the story's still there.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And in a way, I honestly think that's fine. Make it make sense when you can, but outside of that, just tell cool stories, and we all have our own headcanons anyway. Yeah. So it's have fun. Yeah. Have fun. It's not real. Just enjoy it, right? Yes. But speaking of this not real universe, that was going to be a really bad segue. I was going to say, here's a movie that'll be real soon.
Speaking of top level of canon, Sigourney Weaver on her role in The Mandalorian and Grogu. We got an interview from Games Radar, and she talked a little bit about her role in The Mandalorian and Grogu. She has said, quote, "I get to have scenes with little Grogu, which is probably why I did the movie. And he's a little badass too. It's going to be wonderful for people to see what Grogu is up to now, because he's grown up a little bit and is capable of much more than maybe we think just watching the series." Continuing on, as Weaver did not appear in the Mandalorian series, we still don't know for sure who her character is, although it has been reported that Weaver is playing a New Republic Colonel Bishop in the film. When asked for more on her mysterious role, Weaver replies, "I play a wonderful character who is, in a position of authority, and I have to send the Mandalorian out on a mission on the Outer Rim where all the bad stuff happens." So, yeah. Thoughts on that, Matt?
So for the first half of this quote, like we're gonna get a time jump of some type, because
maybe
she says
a little
that,
bit.
I'm not saying like years and years, but enough for her to say that Grogu. It's gonna be wonderful people to see what Grogu is up to now, because he's grown up a little bit and is capable of much more than maybe we think. So he's talking in this movie.
You think?
Yes, he's gonna call Din Dad. Yeah, for sure. Or he's going to say, and he might say, "This is the way," or something like that. There will be a moment in the Twilight of the Soul where it's like, are they going to make it out of here? What are they going to make a stand for? And Grogu will be like, "This is the way." And like, we have to do it.
God bless us, and we'll all be like, everyone.
And just kidding, it's coming out at Christmas. No. So I think we're going to get a time jump, so that tells me. But also, I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find where it had been reported that Weaver was playing a New Republic colonel.
Yeah.
But that checks out for me. I think when we talked about her being cast in this months ago, I think, if I remember right, we agreed that, I mean, you joked about her playing Mara Jade.
She's playing Mara Jade.
Confirmed. You heard it here first, kids. But I think we talked about how both of us could see either a Imperial or the quest giver.
Yeah.
Right.
I still want her to be a Mandalorian, but
yeah, that would be cool.
It would be cool.
But I think it makes sense for her to be the quest giver, the one that recruits Mando. You know, I've heard about you from Carson Teva and my friend Harrison Dula or whatever, but like, if you really are as good as they say you are, then we need you right now. So
do you think we're going to get First Order then in this, if she's sending to the Outer Rim?
Maybe.
Because the show's kind of been setting that up with the council and all that we saw in the last season.
Well, I wonder, my prediction is actually that like all of that is just setting up Thrawn. Right? And then that what we might get is that like at the end of Filoni's movie or whenever they get around to telling that story that all of these Mandoverse tie-ins are leading to, that Hux's dad, Brendel Hux, and a couple other Shadow Collective people are going to, not Shadow Collective, Shadow Council are going to take off towards Exegol.
Which, if you don't get Brendan Gleeson to play the Hux, which I think we've already seen the Hux, but an older Hux.
Yeah, Mando
what are you
season
doing?
3. Yeah. For sure.
But that was young Daddy Hux.
I see what you're saying.
I want, if you're going to do a time jump, I want it to be Brendan Gleeson because he's old, you know, and like have him be. Gosh. I think that'd be great.
Well, and I should say, when I say time jump, I'm thinking not more than like 2 years.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But yeah, eventually we better, you know. But yeah, Zach, do you have thoughts on this? I'm stoked. This sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for her to be. I mean, she's the queen of sci-fi, you know. So to have her in Star Wars is always great. You know, I don't think she's gonna be Mara Jade, but that's okay. But yeah, no, I'm stoked for it. I think she's, you know, she is something that they can sell the movie onto. It'll bring people in. I hope she's more than just a bit part. You know, I hope it's not just like, and go do this quest. And then they come back and she's like, great job. But yeah, we'll see. I think she will be more involved because she says, you know, Grogu's a little badass. So I think she will maybe go with them. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the reason I'm excited about this is this sounds like, I don't want to say back to basics, but simple, straightforward. She's the quest giver.
Yeah.
She's the, you know, I've heard about you and we have a job for you or whatever. As I'm going to send you out on this mission and we're going to cast a recognizable face that has standing in the sci-fi genre. Also, speaking of the queen of sci-fi, if her name is Colonel Bishop, that's a reference to Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
The synthetic in Aliens is named Bishop.
Oh yeah.
So
hilarious.
You know, that sounds that sounds like something Favreau would do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, and we'll name her Bishop. Great, love it. So anyway, that sounds like good stuff.
Yeah.
But so pivoting into other news about current stuff, some dude named Derek Hoffman.
He's not just some dude.
Has been named the Lucasfilm Vice President of Development. Ultimately, he is the person that led the X-Men franchise into television. He was behind the TV shows Legion and The Gifted. The quote from Lucasfilm was, "At Lucasfilm, Derek will help lead the team that develops our stories for adaptation in live action." So, Zach, thoughts on that?
Yeah, you kind of buried the lead, though. Derek Hoffman did Days of Future Past, which is my favorite X-Men movie.
He did?
He was an executive or associate producer on Days of Future Past.
Sure.
Which is, I think, the best. Honestly, is my favorite X-Men movie. So,
sure.
Yeah, I never watched Legion. I heard that it was good. I never watched The Gifted. I only heard good things about it, though. Like, I didn't hear anything bad about it. So I don't have much to go off except for that movie on his producing skills. But that being said, it is my favorite X-Men film. So, hopefully it is a good fit for this. I don't fully understand. I was trying to look up, like, Vice President of Development. I assume he still reports to Kathleen Kennedy.
And Filoni.
And Filoni, sure. I'm pretty, I was trying to look if Filoni is still his boss or if he's Filoni's boss. But
well,
it's probably just a team.
I don't know how that goes. I know that Filoni's CCO and executive vice president.
And he's just a vice president. Gotcha.
Yeah. But in terms of Derek Hoffman and X-Men movies, he worked on every X-Men film.
Oh, did he?
Like all of them. Yeah. So he was one of it was part of the only reason I didn't talk about that, because yes, he worked on Days of Future Past. He also worked on Dark Phoenix. Burp. But so did Simon Kinberg, and I like a lot of Simon Kinberg stuff. Yeah. So who knows? I'm I don't know nothing. The only thing that I know about Legion is that it was intentionally strange. It was like dark and off-putting, and like it was different than the other stuff. So he could bring in different things. The biggest thing to me is Disney bought Fox, and they're reappropriating assets. Yeah. Including people. Yeah. It does tell me, thankfully, we're going to continue to get live action Star Wars projects, right? For sure. Because everything we've been hearing and everything we've been seeing is that the streaming business isn't doing great right now across the board. Yeah. But I'm happy to see that they're still putting assets toward it. Yeah. That's what I got about that. It could be more
movies, so.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
Well, speaking of assets for Disney, it was announced that Luke Skywalker is going to be in Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars theme park. If you don't know what that is, has announced that they are going to have Luke and R2 walking around doing stuff, which, you know what? It's about dang time. Yeah. Because they have done so much with the sequel trilogy, and I think that was honestly their big mistake with not big mistake, but I think it was a miss to do that for so long. But yeah, bring in some OG characters that we know, You brought in the Mandalorian. I think that was last year or the year before. But Luke Skywalker is going to be there now. And that's going to flood people to this. Like, I already want to go. I mean, I've wanted to go. I haven't been. But now that Luke's there, I'm like, oh, I could be a dude playing Luke. That's pretty cool.
We'll make it happen. We'll go for the show one day. Yeah, I saw a lot of clickbait nonsense about how, like, what does this mean for canon? Galaxy's Edge is set in the sequel trilogy between episodes 8 and 9. It's like, guys, Ahsoka and Din and Grogu and Boba Fett were all walking around the park last year. Yeah. So they've been chipping away at that for a bit. I understand the initial desire on Disney's part to have it be where when you go to Galaxy's Edge, you are stepping into, like, Star Wars canon. Yeah. That was what was really cool about building a lightsaber, was the whole thing is set up like you're in a movie where the guy walks in and lowers his hood and talks about the different, like, legendary Jedi and Sith over the years, and that, like, right now there is someone that's restoring the spark of hope. And it's like, does anyone know her name? And then it's, a kid. Rey. And he's like, that's right. You want that moment for kids to go, it's real. Yeah. Right? But since they made Galaxy's Edge, while, yes, you get to be on the Millennium Falcon, and yes, you get to do Star Tours, and that bounces around canon, right? We all would want to walk into the Jedi Temple from the prequels and be able to stand in that room, let's face it. Yeah. And so I see both sides, the pros and cons, but I like that they're starting to chip away and they're just going to send other Star Wars characters out there. We'll get Han and Chewie eventually. Yeah. Chewie walks around, duh. He does. But eventually we'll get Han and we'll get Leia, and, they'll all be there. Yeah. But yeah, it's just fun. I think it's cool. Yeah. It's like, oh, a Star Wars character is showing up in Star Wars land.
Well, and all you would have to do really is be like, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Batu you're taking a time to original trilogy. On, Wednesdays, Fridays, it's sequel trilogy, like. Batu exists. It's a planet. It didn't not exist in the prequel trilogy, So
I didn't even think about it. You know what this is? Probably. It's them probably beginning the process of, at least for a time, rebranding parts of Galaxy's Edge to be Mandalorian era.
Oh, probably.
Because it's not the Luke from the OT, really.
Yeah.
It's the Luke from the Mandalorian in all black with the hood and with R2.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, you could say Return of the Jedi, but it's that era's Luke.
Yeah.
So we'll probably get Ahsoka and Hera and Ezra,
maybe even
and
Thrawn.
Sabine and stuff. Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's probably actually what is happening. Mm-hmm. They're probably beginning a soft rebranding, or I guess retime placement.
Yeah.
To coincide with the Mandalorian and Grogu movie.
Also, it's called Galaxy's Edge. It's not called Batu Land. So
it's true.
They could change anything they want.
That's true.
So,
but hey, you know what we got time for?
Mailbag.
We got time for the mailbag. Finally, we got some fun ones today.
Yeah. First up, we have from Brian Lawson. Do a thought experiment battle royale. One of you chooses 3 Jedi from all time. The other chooses 3 Sith. Whose team wins? So I have my team, and I believe Matt has his team.
Do you want Jedi or Sith?
I have both of them prepared just in case.
So do I. So do we want to rock paper scissors this situation, or what do we want to do?
Sure. I have a D20 here.
That's better because that's better.
Evens, I'll do Jedi. Odds, you'll do Jedi.
Sure.
We rolled an 11, so you do Jedi.
Alrighty. We'll go. I'll name one, you name one, and we'll go back and forth. You know what I mean? So in this snake draft, my list is very boring. But first choice, Anakin Skywalker.
My first choice for Sith is Darth Sion.
Ooh,
from KOTOR,
cool.
the like craggly, so rage-filled that he's breaking from the inside.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. For my next one, Mace Windu.
Ooh, my second one is Darth Bane, creator of the Rule of 2.
There it is. Nice. All right. And my last Jedi, it's obvious. I went simple because these are the ones that we know the most about. Grandmaster Yoda.
Nice. Yours was almost my Jedi pick. I did. But my final Sith, I had a little rage. I had powerful in the Force, so I figured let's go martial arts, and I did Darth Maul.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So now it's time for the playground argument of all playground arguments. Who wins? Anakin, Mace, and Yoda, or Sion, Bane, and Maul?
I mean, you got Anakin and Yoda there. I think I think it's a no-brainer, but
well, give yourself some credit. I mean, because I'm not as much of an authority as on the abilities of Sion and Bane.
Yeah.
I almost put Nihilus on cool. If I had done Sith, because he's like a Force vampire.
Yeah.
And you don't know how much of that works in canon, but who cares? It's fun.
Yeah.
And, what can Sion do?
Sion was more just like full of rage and like a heavy attacker. Bane I did because the Rule of 2 and because of the episode in Clone Wars where he like tempts Yoda and seems very strong in the Force. And then Maul I did as a kind of in between, those two. But because I think Maul would take down Mace maybe.
Okay.
But I think Yoda overpowers Bane and Anakin overpowers Sion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and see, I don't know that Maul takes down Mace.
Really?
Well, it comes down to how you interpret the duel in Revenge of the Sith. I think Mace beats Palpatine. And then Anakin shows up at just the right time, and Palpatine's like, good, thank God. I'm so weak. Don't kill me. I think Mace beats him. And if Mace beats Palpatine, because Palpatine dog walks Darth Maul like several times.
True.
So, you hate to say this plus this equals this,
No,
But,
no, that's
well,
very solid.
Well, here's the real question, because the answer is there is no answer. We would just have to, we'll stat these out and we'll do a role-playing battle one day.
Yeah.
We'll do a Star Wars D&D battle. But the real question is if Sion, Bane, and Maul are able to cooperate.
Oh, yeah.
Because as we know with the rule of two, would they also just be looking to kill each other? The one thing that I know, if Bane can summon a thought bomb, which is something that he does in his novels from the EU, and I haven't read all of them, but I've read a lot. If he can summon basically a force bomb that entraps souls in a moment in time, then yeah, there ain't no coming back from that. I don't know if that's canon necessarily.
Yeah.
But basically, I think if they can do that, there would be trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they can corrupt Anakin to the dark side of the Force. And
Very
I think Mason
easy.
Yoda. Yeah, as we know. Real easy to do.
I have the power to save the one you love. All right.
But
I'm evil now.
but with just these three on these three in a world where they're all just
lightsabering,
dueling and lightsabering, I think the Jedi team clears.
Yeah, for sure. All right, just for fun, what was your Sith team?
Oh, I deleted him.
Oh, okay.
That was so dumb. But it's funny. I had no, that's right. I can remember. I had Nihilus, I had Bane, and I had Palpatine.
Nice. Yeah, I had Yoda, Windu, and Ahsoka for my Jedi.
Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming Ahsoka. In like
sequel
old
trilogy. Yeah.
Sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe who knows? She might not be around.
No, but like post Return of the Jedi.
Era. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, thanks for the question, Brian. That was cool.
Yeah.
It was a fun playground argument. Okay, even though we didn't argue. But another friend of the podcast, Rocky Westbrook, sent in kind of a fun, like just storytelling question. What are your thoughts on the world between worlds and what they might do with that in the future? Same with Mortis. So, Zach, I'm going to go to you for this funky force question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get this answer in the next season of Ahsoka. But I like World Between Worlds, but I am very wary of it as a storytelling device because I don't love the time travel of it, of being able to be like, oh, I'm going to go save this person because I can travel through time, which I think they used it perfectly right in Rebels. And, they're like, you can't save him, you can't save Kanan here. But I worry about it. It's one of the few things in Star Wars that I'm like, that's really cool. I worry about who gets to use that in storytelling, like, Dave seems to use it very sparingly and has it, kind of set in his mind. But like you give that to some up and comer who wants to make a name, and Kylo's beaten Vader in the World Between Worlds in the past, and killing, I don't know, coming out and he's now Palpatine or something. I don't know. It's a way that you could do Star Wars What If very easily, but I worry about it. Mortis I really like because it is unclear what is real and what isn't. It is because they go into Mortis and then they come out and they're like, wait, did we all just do that? Because Ahsoka's alive, but she died. But what just happened? Was that a dream? I like that. I like that it's, okay, cool. It's weird and we can't explain it. And I think we will see Mortis. I think you have to see Mortis in the next season of Ahsoka. But I like that it's not set in stone. What happens there doesn't necessarily completely change what's on the outside. But yeah, that's my thoughts. What about you?
Yeah. A lot of the same stuff. World Between Worlds is really cool. We talked about it before. I don't think of it as literal time travel, but I think that an inferior storyteller to Dave Filoni could use it as literal time travel, like you're talking about, and destroy all consequences.
Yeah.
for storytelling of like nobody dies anymore because we can just world between worlds them.
Yeah.
I think if you continue to use it as the netherworld of the Force, as a bridging of the gap between this life and the next, or this life and becoming one of the Force, I think that opens a lot of really interesting storytelling possibilities when you use it responsibly.
Yeah.
It can be like it was on Ahsoka season 1, where they where it's an opportunity for Anakin to teach Ahsoka another lesson.
It's where the Force ghosts travel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the Force Ghost Highway.
Yeah.
But as for what they might do with it in the future, I think we're gonna get it in Ahsoka season 2
Oh, for sure.
again. And same thing with Mortis. I think we're gonna get Mortis in Ahsoka season 2. I think. Well, I don't know if we're gonna get Abeloth. I don't.
I don't either.
I think that
I kind of hope we
don't. I kind of do hope that we get the Dave Filoni version of Abeloth.
Yeah.
If you don't know what we're talking about, Mortis is a place that started on Clone Wars and where there were these Force gods. There was a father, son, and daughter. And Anakin was able to bring them into balance, and it was kind of a literal interpretation of what could Anakin bringing balance to the Force mean, right? That he could control them. He could control the son and daughter. The son was the dark side, the daughter was the light, and the father was just the Force. And then the old EU, tying back into canon like we were talking about earlier, decided, well, there must have been a mother.
Yeah.
And so they created Abeloth, and she was this like Force, like this is Satan.
Yeah.
Essentially. She was Satan. And she was actually entombed in the Maw, which is the black hole cluster that you see in Solo, a Star Wars story, leading to Kessel, right? Neither here nor there, a whole bunch of stories, but most of which don't count anymore. But so that character has existed in publishing for a while, has not been touched in canon.
Yeah.
But that was not a character that George Lucas created or had any input in, because as we know, he had input in all of Clone Wars. I would really, really like to see a George Lucas pupil, Dave Filoni version of the mother, Mortis.
Yeah.
Because if Baylan Skoll kept talking about how he was chasing this great power that's been calling to him, what if the power that's calling to him is Abeloth and she's been entrapped on a planet in another galaxy, which might be the planet that the Night Sisters are from, right? What if she raised them and then even they were like, whoops, and entombed her in something? I think that could make for a really interesting story if the bad guy is chasing power to rewrite. As he says, he's trying to end all the wars, period. If he's chasing this power that he thinks is going to do it, but the biggest lesson of Star Wars is the more you chase power, the more you chase control, you're going to lose all of those things.
Yeah.
I think that could be really, really cool, and I would like to watch it because I don't have any idea how they could actually accomplish in live action the dark side of the Force personified in a evil lady. It can't just be a normal-looking person. Yeah. It's got to be mind-bendingly weird. And because that sounds impossible, I hope we get to see it. You know?
Yeah.
So that's what I think could take place.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And our last question coming from Kai, who has been on the show before, my partner. If you were given the chance to produce and direct your own Star Wars film with a very generous budget, what story would you tell and who would you cast to play the roles? Would you aim for practical effects or more CGI/AI? What monsters or planets would you focus on? Who would be the villain and who would be the protagonist? Matt, we're going to shoot you over for you for this first one, and then I'll give my my answer.
Yeah. So we've answered a version of this question before. It was like, what story would you tell? And I don't remember if this was the story that I said I would tell, but I'm going to tell it now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reality is, if I could do any Star Wars movie, I would do Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy.
Yes.
But that's not the story I'm going to tell right now. So what I would do is I would adapt the Darth Bane trilogy of novels into a canon version of that story.
Cool. You have not said this before.
Okay, cool. Because to me, the major missing pieces in Star Wars canon of the stories that we have right now are all Sith related, right? We have heard of the Rule of Two. We haven't seen what that was about. We have heard of Darth Plagueis. We were going to see what that was about, and then the Acolyte got canceled, right? I still want Darth Plagueis to have his own show because I think that would be rad, and I think it would break the internet. But the Rule of Two, if you don't know, has been established in lore, was how the Sith survived. that the Sith kept rising up and then extincting themselves because they would always fall to infighting because the way of the Sith is the way of selfishness, right?
Mhm.
So they're always trying to kill each other. There was no cooperation. And Darth Bane was the one that was like, oh, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to kill everybody, all of them, and I'm going to keep one as my apprentice. And there's only ever going to be two. A master to have the power and an apprentice to crave it. And we're going to work in the shadows, and that's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to take everything over. And so for that role, the key to this movie would be casting someone that could play it. They have to be physically imposing.
Yeah.
They have to have wild, just like, I hesitate to say stage presence because it's on film, but just a powerful presence, just a powerful actor. I think you break from Star Wars tradition of young, unknown actors, and I think you cast Michael Fassbender.
Cool.
I think he would crush this role. He's getting a little old, so you would have to get on this thing. But him or a Michael Fassbender type, like kind of the Shakespearean physical sword fighting actor.
Yeah.
And then the story would be, and this is loosely not really able to work with canon anymore, but it would be the story that I would tell, right? You open you open on a battle that we have heard about and thought about and never seen on screen outside of in the Old Republic, like animated trailers for that video game, where it's 1,000 Jedi versus 1,000 Sith.
Cool.
And we're watching Braveheart, but with lightsabers and the Force.
Cool.
Open there, the height of the war, or one of the many, many wars between the Jedi and the Sith. And then, the battle has happened, it's been won, and then whatever, the Dark Lord of the Sith comes out and is like, Bane, good job, whatever. And Bane's like, yeah, whatever, and cuts his head off. And everybody's like, what? And he's like, go ahead and challenge me, like, step up. Who's going to do something? And they're all like, right, we can't, right? Or something like that. And Bane has taken control because he is the most powerful. Again, this is not quite the novels, but this would be the story that I would tell. That power is the path, and prowess on the battlefield is the path. And he's leading this campaign against the Jedi, and he's got another buddy that's a Sith, and they like grew up together. And the Sith is like, what are you going to do now that you're in charge? Like, how are we going to win? And Bane's like, I don't know, because eventually somebody's going to kill me. I haven't figured out what we're going to do yet. But for now, we're just going to try and extinct these stupid Jedi. In the meantime, the Jedi are scattered across the galaxy, lots of different temples, and a senator or a politician of some type meets with a Jedi, and this could be anybody that we want. I don't care. An actor that we all love is playing a Jedi that's cool. Okay, and
Keanu Reeves.
Sure, great, Keanu. And they're like, Master Reeves or whatever. We are forming a galactic republic. The planets are coming together, and we're going. And it's not going to be like the last time. This is going to work. And we want you to be involved. We want you to be like intimately involved in this. We want the Jedi to be hubbed on Coruscant. And I don't really know if this works with canon, like I said, but that's what they're setting up. And the Jedi's like, I don't know. We really do good being out in the galaxy. I don't know about that. And they're like, yeah, but together we can defeat the Sith. Blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of the B plot. Meanwhile, one of the many raids, Bane finds a young girl who's very, very force sensitive, and he's like a kid. And you can do a dark Sith thing where Bane kills the family, and blah, blah, blah. And then he's talking to this kid who finds out she has the Force. It's like a little kid. There's like not a bunch of dialogue, right? But you can just see that maybe she pulls his lightsaber from him, he takes it back. He's like, shut up. Hits her or whatever, something horrible. And she's like, I hate you. And he's like, good. Well, anyway, we move on to the rest of the movie.
You do Underworld, but with,
yeah. Fun fact, haven't seen Underworld, but these are not new stories that I'm coming up with. So we go to the onset of the final battle. Everything's worked out. They're about to attack the Jedi and wipe them out. The Jedi are up against it. This is the end. And somebody goes to stab Bane from behind. He whirls around and runs this person through, and it's the friend. And he just kind of gets it and proceeds to slaughter all of the Sith. All of them. Just wipes them out. And maybe that is actually the latter half of the movie. Maybe you do like some of it's like a slasher thing or something, right? Where Bane is hunting down Sith, right? One at a time, or whatever. Either way.
And the Jedi are like, all of the Sith are getting killed.
and then they don't know what's going on. They're like, they've fallen to infighting. Okay, let's make a republic. But then the end of the movie is the Jedi Temple being either constructed or rededicated if it was closed, whatever. And the Senate is being constructed, and the galaxy is at peace. And you kind of pan out into the shadows, Bane and this kid. And he's like, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to infiltrate that Senate. There's only ever going to be two of us. It's going to take a very, very long, it's going to take thousands of years. But this is how we're going to defeat them. The Jedi have just basically signed their own death warrant, and they don't even know it yet.
Cool.
And that would be the movie.
Nice.
So now, Kai had lots of other questions. Practical effects or more CGI, a happy mix for this to be old.
Yeah.
I would want very tactile, an old feeling Star Wars universe. Monsters or planets, I don't know. Didn't think about that. But the villain is also the protagonist in this version, but a Braveheart style war movie, but they have the Force, and it's about the differing philosophies of the Jedi and the Sith, and that ultimately Bane seeing that the way forward is to kill all of his compatriots, and that's the only way they're going to be able to do it, and they're going to have to do it politically. That sounds like a cool movie.
Yeah.
So there's my pitch.
Cool. Well, here's something completely different. That is very cool. I went completely opposite. No Force users at all in mine.
Cool. Love this.
So I set mine during the prequels.
Okay.
So I took the very, very generous budget and I ran with it. Cool. So my story evolves around a duo.
Okay.
Bensdale and Lee Bell, Pantoran and a Talz. Pantoran, if you don't remember or are not watching Clone Wars or any of that, they are blue-skinned people with like gold tattoos and gold eyes. It's what George Lucas made himself in the prequels. There's a whole arc on Clone Wars that's really cool. The Talz are the big white Yeti things with like the little little I don't even know what, tiny little tube mouth and 4 eyes. But it follows them. It's going to start on Orto Plutonio because that's for some reason my favorite planet in Star Wars.
Cool.
Yeah, Orto Plutonio is this like super like ice world that is a moon of the Pantoran homeworld. And it's going to follow these two friends that are kind of down on their luck, but have dreams of being pod racers. And so Bensdale is the Pantoran. He is a bartender, who's saving up money, and, LeBeau is this mechanic that's in the same town, and they are like basically building a pod together. So the beginning is like, him like bartending, and he's like, making blue milk or something. And the guy, one of his regulars is like, man, when are you going to finally get out of here and go pod racing? And he goes, a couple extra dollars and we can actually, make the fee for the race, right? And he goes, well, I believe in you, kid. And he like leaves a huge tip, right? So he can go on it. So, he like runs off, grabs the towels, and he's like, we finally got enough cash. And, they get in a snowspeeder because snowspeeders are my favorite, and it's an ice planet, that they have fitted for space travel. And they start to take off, and the towels is in the back, and he shoots the cannon in the back that has the magnet that they take down the walkers with. He shoots that, and that becomes their buggy, and they tow a pod basically behind it. And so they're like rinky dink, like old snowspeeder, like falling apart with shooting, and they're like, barely hyperspacing to the big thing. From there, we meet our bad guy, who is a Tognoth, which, if you don't know Tognoth, they are that really scary looking alien from Rogue One. They have like the almost like skull-like with the two beady eyes and the mask. I just love the way that they look. So I was like, cool. Let's go there. That's your bad guy. He is the racer. I want him to be voiced by Idris Elba, because you got to have the best voice. and Idris Elba also is interested. He does like Formula One and has done like some racing and stuff. So I think it'd be cool to like bring him into this. But from there, you do the pod racing circuit from Star Wars Episode 1, A Pod Racer.
Cool.
And so you go to each different planet, and it's the different races, and him and your two, protagonists trying to like soup up the pod. Benz is like bartending at night on these different planets to get money for parts, so that they're like upgrading their pod as they're going, and Charles is like, souping up, and based off of the wins that they keep on getting, maybe they get second in the first race, or third even, but they get a check, and they're like, cool, we're gonna take this money, we're gonna soup up our thing, we're gonna get in our RV of a snow speeder and go to the next planet for the next thing. But it allows you to see all of these worlds that we've seen in this video game that some of them aren't even like canon. Some of them have been like, thrown to the wayside, but you get Ando Prime, which is your big ice planet. And I think he wins the first one because he's like, wait, I know ice. I'm on this is like at home, ice planet. Great. Second one is Aqualaris, which is a water planet. Then you get Barunda, which is a swamp planet, Mollister, which is your jungle planet, Mangaza, which is like this fiery industry planet, Uvu 4, which is like is a space station, Ordo
asteroid prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ordo Ibana, which is the like cloud planet that you race on, and then you finish it with the Bunta Eve Classic in Tatooine. And so you get basically a recreation of Star Wars Episode 1's pod racing thing, but our new characters going after it, and all the while, the bad guy is trying to sabotage the whole time. He's like, who's this up and comer? I have the best team, the best people to get my pod to the best. He's the Formula One racer who is sponsored by, all of the brands and has all of the top notch. Meanwhile, you have your two protagonists that are like taking junk parts from different planets and like building this pod that at the end on Tatooine becomes really based. Like they probably get a different thing on each planet that like soups up their pod that, the Tognoth would like look down on, would never put his part in, and end up winning the Bunta Eve Classic and winning the big check, and changing their lives forever. And you might even get the same like butting up against each other, like not very big nods at the end to the big thing. As far as practical effects versus CG, I think lean in heavy on the practical as much as possible, but it is a pod racing thing, so you got to use some of the CG. No AI. I would not do any AI. Anything.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned.
Yeah,
because
F that. Monsters and planets, we've kind of focused on that, but I would want all of the monsters. I want all of the racers from the original Episode 1. I want Ben Haderos, and I want all of those to make cameos. The villain, we've talked about protagonists. As far as actors, I'm casting Matt and I as the two leads. But if the studio says who, then maybe.
Wait. So does that mean you're a Talls?
No, I'd be the Pantor and you'd be the Talls.
Oh, but I'm so short.
Yeah, you're voicing it.
Okay, cool.
But if they're like, no, we can't cast two unknowns for this, I would get D. Bradley Baker to do the Talls because he's the best at the monster noises, and like a Glenn Powell type, or like some ruffian. Not that I'm a Glenn Powell type, but if I think he has the comedy chops and and the looks for Star Wars, so I'm surprised he's not in Star Wars yet. He's I feel like on a rocket ship on his career, so yeah, get him before he's too expensive. But yeah, that's my story. I want to do a pod racing, classic prequel story that has nothing to do with the wars. Like maybe they mention it and they're like, oh, that's crazy. Well, I can't afford to think about that.
Can't afford to care.
Not that. It's just like, oh, that's Clone Wars started. Cool. Well, I have another race to go do. Can't deal with that right now,
That's awesome. I love that we pitched two completely different things.
Yeah.
That was cool. We had like the biblical Game of Thronesian epic, and then like turds racing pods.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and it's weird. We're probably going to get a pod racing movie. I mean, I hope we do, or a pod racing story in some way, just because I hope that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, one of George Lucas's favorite things growing up was drag racing.
Yeah.
I would love there to be I mean, it's hard to make that emotional, right? To have there be a grounding thing.
No, it's
story,
not. It's the struggle. It's a sports movie. You're just making a sports movie in space.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love sports movies.
Like
I don't love sports. I love sports movies.
Oh, and sports movies are easy to invest people because they're overcoming such clear problems. But I would wonder, it would be interesting to try to make it emotionally investing so that it's not like Saturday morning wacky races.
Yeah.
That being said, I'll watch this movie. This sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's our movie pitches, and there's our episode 28, 2 away from 30.
Yeah.
We've been at this for a minute, and we hope you're enjoying what we're being at here on this Star Wars podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Get involved. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. In the meantime, Zach, let the people know where they can find you and what you have going on in your life.
Yeah, I hinted at it. I can't really talk about what I got going on, but I got stuff going on, and it's exciting. The best way to find me is to email the podcast, forceofothers radio@gmail.com, or to comment on the YouTubes or any of our videos on the Instagram, and we'll pop in there and chat with you. But yeah, Matt, where can they find you?
The same way.
Yeah.
Might do away with how you can find us. Just find us through reaching out with the show. I'm getting to be a little too busy for the social medias. But if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, hopes, dreams for the future of the podcast, or you just want to talk Star Wars with two people that I feel like we're pretty agreeable, check out forceofothersradio@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts and hopes and dreams. I don't know. At least if they relate to Star Wars.
Star Wars dreams.
Star Wars dreams. But send us questions and we'll answer them on the show. I have new big plans coming up for Star Wars Day.
Ooh.
We are probably going to be delving into role-playing games on the show for the first time. Might be a little, might be announcing this a little prematurely, but it's coming. It's coming. We got plans, and it's gonna be very, very fun. And if that's not your thing, we hope you still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we're loving what we're doing, and we hope you're loving listening. And because of the day that this comes out, we hope you have a very special Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.
Spend it with someone that you love. Jenny and I got big date plans. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be good.
And I'll be working.
We'll go to Zach's bar and wish him a happy Valentine's Day as he gives you drinks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One of the busiest days of the year. It'll be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that's like in the bar world, Valentine's Day.
We have like 300 people coming into the restaurant, so.
My Lord.
Yeah, it'll be a fun day.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, anyway, all that being said, hope you get to spend it with somebody that you love. And in the meantime, remember, the force of others will be with you.
Always.
The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.